This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger.
Hey, what's going on, you fucks? We are now live on all of our podcast platforms. Please check us out on YouTube, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, and wherever you may find your podcast pleasures. Dun, 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 dun. Well, what the hell is going on out there? It's been about a month since I've done the last podcast, and the world is burning. There's this favorite meme I like to use. I think I use it for my YouTube avatar. And it's a guy sitting on his chair watching a globe burn. And I think that has a very strong metaphor for where we are for the last 30 days, I'd say. So anyway, let's get right to this. This is your one-stop shop current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Let's get to it. So the world is a-burnin'. A protest over police brutality has morphed into a Neo-Marxist revolution attacking our nation's controversial monuments and history. Democrat-run states and cities are being run into the ground. But you know what? Let's defund the police. Why not? I mean, you know, when New York in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s was just crime-ridden, Rudy Giuliani came in there and he said, we're going to defund the police and turn all of this around. That didn't happen. It was quite the opposite, actually. So, what do we have going on in Seattle? This CHOP, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or Capitol Hill Occupied Place, whatever the fuck it is. I mean, what is this? This is what we're doing now? I mean, I remember 10 years ago when the Occupy Wall Street movement was taking on, and that was, you know, basically, if I'm remembering this correctly, basically a protest against the TARP program, which bailed out Wall Street. This is something like that. I mean, but if you know, I went to Burning Man for a few years. All right, well, if you can tell, we are having an audio issue there, but I've fixed it. Whenever I break down this whole rig and set it back up, I'm always running into some kind of audio problem. Anyway, back to it. So, watching these Occupy whatever things, and I'm talking about the ones that we're looking at today. Wires, chairs, they fucking suck. Invest in wireless headphones. Anyway, you know, looking at these pictures you see from the media of what's going on in that Capitol Hill area in Seattle, it kind of looks like Burning Man on the street, you know? I mean, look at some pictures of Burning Man in a desert and imagine that, you know, makeshift city block, an actual city block. And you basically have CHOP. I mean, so CHOP happens, you know, what, once a year for a week in the Black Rock Desert? That shouldn't be a big surprise to anyone. I mean, you see that crowd? If anyone's listening to the podcast with our somewhat friend, not politically, of course, B Money, a.k.a. Brandon, my friend for like 30 years. Yeah, that's his people. Those are the kind of people that, I'm not going to ramble on into nothingness like the president does. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, let's get back to it. So this Chaz and Chop zone declares, hey, this is an autonomous zone, which it's not. We don't want any police. We're going to handle matters in basically a socialistic and social way. No police allowed. And then they took over the precinct, camping on the streets, graffiti everywhere. Again, this is Burning Man in a city. And what do we have the local government say about 7 blocks of their city being taken over? Oh, it's nothing to worry about. It's not a protest. It's a block party. It's the Summer of Love. The Summer of Love. And that was what, about a week or two ago? I think there's, last I checked, 2 people dead, 4 people injured from shootings taking place in this autonomous zone. What planet is this mayor living on? You know, Venus is what, for women, Mars is for men, whatever the fuck it is. It's just like, what? The Summer of Love? People are getting shot, lady. What the fuck are you doing? I mean, this reminds me of, you know, being back in high school and you having that friend who's got like the liberal hippie parents, and or in the best case scenario, you're dating the girl with the liberal hippie parents, and you know, they're like, yeah, man, you can have your sleepovers and stuff. It's great when you're a teenager. But that's not this is just insane. So on a local level, let's look at this, from the bottom up, government-wise. I mean, you have this chop zone being basically authorized by the local Seattle government. Sorry, my sound is really bad, and I'm trying to work on that as we do this. You have the local government caving to protesters in Seattle. Why? I don't know. I remember 25 years ago, a lot of people saying a lot of nice things about Seattle. Now, not so much. I mean, why would anyone want to go to that city, let alone invest into it, pay tax dollars into a city that's allowing protesters to take over? So on this local level, we have mayors and city councils want to let people protest, not social distance, defund the police, and now starting to let them occupy land in order for them to get what they want? And how'd that work out last time, like we were talking about earlier with Occupy Wall Street? Didn't the cops go in there and start basically kicking people out and beating anyone that got in their way? Okay, maybe they weren't beating them, but, maybe they were. I don't remember. I don't really care. You shouldn't be in public spaces that aren't yours. You want to live there? Pay for the land, you fuck. Anyway, so like I said, how did that work last time? You have the 2010 New York Occupy Wall Street, which got broken up very quickly by the New York police. Now, on a side note here, these anti-government protests have an intersection of like-minded policies between the two political sides of this culture clash. But the polarization prevents that avenue from being explored on a state level even. And I don't see any of these blue state governors doing anything. And the hypocrisy going on between Trump supporters protesting and people protesting for civil rights, defunding the police, is maddening. And I don't see how people are, if you think pointing out someone's hypocrisy is going to convert them to your side, you're just approaching it completely the wrong way. Now, these blue state governors, they like to straddle the fence, pandering to local voters and appeasing the feds for money at the same time. And after allowing protests and anarchy for, a week, a month, 2 weeks, whatever it was, imagine that. The coronavirus has resurged. But you don't see these blue state governors taking responsibility. Where's Cuomo? Saying, these protests, they've gotten out of control. The rioting is just crazy. The protests are great. It's that is kind of, responsible for the resurgence. No, you don't hear that. It's Florida, Texas, Arizona, all these red state governors reopening. All this resurgence is from them. It's unreal. And again, you don't see these blue state governors taking any responsibility for it. It's not the protests. It's the red states reopening. And in between all this in between all this party hackery, we have an alliance between a Neo-Maoist faction of the Democrat Party and the Black Lives Matter movement that is being led by two pro-Marxist fucks. Think about that. You have a neo-Maoist faction aligning with a neo-Marxist, anti-Israel, Black Lives Matter leadership. So what do we have? What is this? Is this a civil war? A culture war? Is this a culture clash? A skirmish? Can it be both? How many more questions can I ask rhetorically and still sound smart? Here we are in an election year, in the midst of a culture war. Yeah, it's a culture war. It's not a civil war yet, but we're beyond culture clash. I would say culture clash has basically been, going back to 2009 when Obama was, or 2008 when he was elected and then inaugurated in 2009, and we're just, 11 years later into that clash, which is now, since about a month ago, been upgraded to a culture war. And statues are being torn down. Anyone in the hospitality industry is trapped. That's a whole nother story nobody's talking about. What if you're working a job right now in the restaurant industry? And don't get me wrong, the restaurant industry is hard. And, when you start adding, now you got to wear face masks. You got to sanitize everything. You got to wear gloves. You got to make people walking into said restaurant wear masks. Again, the political side of that's not really what I'm debating here. We're talking about the food service industry, making people food. It's not an easy task. And then when you add all these other fucking regulations, basically because the business is scared of being sued, it's madness. And, again, like I said, this is something nobody's talking about. And if you don't want to work in the restaurant industry anymore because you don't want to wear gloves or wear a mask or being susceptible to, getting the coronavirus while at work. I mean, if you want to get out of that situation, where are you going to go? You can't go to a grocery store. I mean, you can, but you're going to be working on the front lines still. You're probably wearing gloves. And you're probably wearing a mask. So what is someone to do? But no one wants to talk about that. Let's, burn the fucking system down. Which, again, I mean, I have my libertarian, against the establishment streak. But tearing down history and the past isn't the way to do that. And, like I said, nobody's talking about this. And I used to always have this saying when I worked in the restaurants, because you would always run into someone that had something to complain about, guest or employee, but, we're talking about the employees or your coworkers here. Oh, this person didn't tip me right. I don't want to do side work. This is too much, this, that, the other, whatever the complaint may be, toxic personalities, etc. But I used to always tell these people, hey, man, this is not the People's Republic of China. You don't have to work here. You can go get a job at Walgreens. You can go find another job raking leaves. I mean, there's so many different choices in this economy to find work. But that's not true anymore. And in fact, it's starting to feel like the opposite, where it's starting to feel like the People's Republic of China. You must wear a mask. You wear mask for 4 hours. Mask for hour. You wear mask now.
And that's Ready Set Podcast on Twitter in care of Joe Persinger at 420 Chicago Avenue.
So when the Founding Fathers sat there in Philadelphia in 1776 and signed the Declaration of Independence, starting this experiment that we've all basically benefited from over the last few hundred years, do you think any of them took global pandemic in the what's going to take down the USA in the future pool? I mean, I wonder if that was maybe just the side bet to, how drunk John Adams was going to be when he actually signed it. Man, this is, a crazy time we're living in here. And then speaking of which is even crazier, you move over into the sports world. And those fucks can't even get their shit together. Speaking of which, baseball. And the MLB is back. And I say that with question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point. And really, more importantly, does anyone care? I mean, here we are, 26 years later, and MLB owners and players have again showed themselves as greedy, out-of-touch, meathead fucks. The whole argument is about money. Prorated salaries versus empty stadiums being played without fans, which means no one's buying beer, no one's buying hot dogs, no one's buying peanuts. So the owners originally agreed to prorate the salaries. We can't pay you now, but we'll hook you up with 100% of your salary on the back end. Not a bad deal. But then, when they find out the federal government is basically saying, look, you fucks, you can't jam 20,000 people into your stadiums to watch baseball this summer, or for the 60 games you're going to have for 2 months. So the owners, now realizing, oh crap, that's a crap load of money we're missing out on. Here's a great idea. Let's split our revenues, or our lack of revenues, with the players, and then pull back on the prorated salaries. Well, I don't think the players appreciated that sentiment. I mean, that's basically like, let's say you work for, a pizzeria, and, given the circumstances what we're in now, we're going into takeout only, and Can you imagine if your boss came to you and said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to split my profits with you, but you're not going to get paid hourly anymore. And then when the times come to get profits, he's like, we're at a loss. You get nothing. I don't think that would go over too well. I mean, that's a horrible metaphor, but it's basically, because it's not like the players are walking away with nothing, but nothing compared to what they would be making had they not be doing 50-50 splits and getting their prorated salary. Anyway, the owners are fucking shade balls. Now, they want, what is this? Oh, I see. Okay, so yeah, like I say, they want a revenue split, but only now when the fucking stands are empty. Fuck greedy fucks. It's unbelievable. So the players, they're not innocent either in any of this. They balked at multiple offers from the owners. Again, the owners, they're not making their case any easier. But remember, these two sides have to get along if they want to play ball and make money. And one side's being greedy. The other side, rightfully is taking a stand. But, it's a fluid situation. And sometimes you got to be flexible. That's fucking life, And, if you don't want to play, then you don't want your salary, you can do that too. I mean, I don't know exactly how the CBA works, if you're even can do that, and given the circumstance of where we are today, this is all very different times, so it's all just fucking fucked. And why they're even bothering with the season, I don't know. I'm probably getting ahead of myself at this point, but they balked at those multiple. See what I did there? Balked, huh? Anyway, the multiple offers from the owners. They wanted an unreasonable amount of games going into the winter. I mean, don't get me wrong, as a player, I'm sure you want your games, but do you really want to be going up against the NFL ratings-wise if you're the owners? I mean, the players don't care. They get paid just showing up to swing a bat or throw a ball. They're not worried about ratings like the owners are. So that's where one of the disconnects are right there. And, even though salaries are 100% prorated, the players were still complaining about the risk of being injured. You're being compensated, bitch. Jeez. I mean, they finally agreed to a 60-game season, which, there's some upside and downside, and what the fuck? Let's weigh them out. What else do we got to do today, right? Let's go downside. Players will only get about 260 to 300 at-bats in this shortened season. If you think 4 to 5 at-bats a game times 10 times 6... that's how I figured that number. So what is that? 4 to 5 at bats. Yeah, times 10. Yeah, times 10 games. Yeah, there you go. So there's the math. Or you could check me, write a comment if I did it wrong. Whatever. You can go fuck yourself either way. So how can you judge a player's success based on 1/3 of a whole season's at bats? Again, I really apologize for this horrible audio today. I mean, that's a downside really more for the players than it would be for the owners, I guess. But, I mean, baseball is a statistical sport. It's all about how much... You need about 1,500 at-bats, okay? If, you're going to really measure out someone over 162 games, 6-month season. Because that's really what baseball is. It's the grind, If you ever notice when they talk stats, they're like, oh, well, this guy, he's a warm weather hitter. He's not good in April and May, but once June comes around, he starts heating up. But you're not going to have that. I'm kind of getting into a little bit more of that later in this list. Upside. You, the fan, only have to watch your team swing at the ball 50% less. And I don't think any MLB fans are sitting down and, watching their team's stats, thinking, oh, I'm only going to get to see 500 at-bats this year. Like, it's just not a thing. Nobody gives a fuck that much. Here's the downside. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And MLB doesn't want to be embarrassed in the ratings by going up against the NFL, kind of what I alluded to there earlier. So, the baseball traditionalist is going to think that this is kind of bullshit if you think about it. Baseball is a marathon. It's not, let's pound out 60 games in 2 months and see who the best team is. It's, a 6-month season through the summer, the old dog days of summer. And whoever can get through those dog days or, pull themselves out of the cellar, go on a hot streak in September, and just waltz their way into the playoffs and into the World Series. I mean, that's happened before, too. See the San Francisco Giants in 2010, 12, 14, which got stopped in 16 by the Cubs. Anyway, baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. Upside, every one game in this shortened season is equal to 27 games in a regular season. So meaning the first 2 weeks of baseball, for the first time since before the Reconstruction era, will actually be important for the entire season. That's kind of a big deal if you think about it. I mean, I've been watching baseball since as early as I can remember, and when the season starts in April, I'm not really paying attention to the standings till maybe mid-May. Even then, June, it's just there's so many games and so many days, and just the first half of the season is pretty meaningless if you think about it. But now you're reducing that down to it's like 2.7 games. So one game is equal to like 2.7 games if I'm doing the math correctly there. So yeah, the first 2 weeks, pretty important. But here's the downside. If your team loses the first 25% of their games, your team's not going to have enough time to get hot enough to make the postseason run. And, I find that just extremely unfortunate because that's probably one of the coolest things about baseball is, well, not the coolest, but most interesting is that you can have a team that is just cellar dwelling, basically, and then just go on some crazy hot streak. And with this 60-game season, you're not going to have that, and that's it takes away, basically if your team's down, 20 games, like I said, the first 25% of your games, if those are lost, your season's lost, basically. So there's this, again, why we're doing this whole thing up and down, it's great that the first 2 weeks are going to matter, but does it? And, regardless of these ups and downs, this list that I've put together, of this 60-game season, there's another pressing matter that just hovers over Major League Baseball. And what that is this sport going to even be around in 30 years? So, I mean, there's a football. This is what I've kind of noticed in all my years in sports. There's football or baseball guy. It's rare to meet someone who is both well-versed in both sports. I mean, it's very rare. You don't find too many guys, especially these days, who are baseball guy. I mean, there's some guys that play baseball, but they don't watch it. Everyone's into football now. That's the thing. And, in the 15 years I've watched it go mostly to football guy. I mean, there used to be baseball guy. There was a few baseball guys, actually. But, since, 2004, when I really, really started watching Major League Baseball, it's mostly football guy now. And is there even anyone under 30 who really consumes the Major League Baseball on a regular basis? And if so, is it beyond a regional level? Meaning, if you're a Oakland A's fan, are you watching, the Miami Marlins take on the Tampa Bay Rays? I mean, are you making time to watch New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox? Are you watching the Cubs and White Sox? I just don't think this is something that... There's your difference between football and baseball, basically. Is people will tune in to watch Green Bay, Dallas. People will tune in to watch, New England and Buffalo. Really, not really. No one really watches the AFC East, especially now. But you get what I'm saying. That's the significant difference between football and baseball. Is football is national. Baseball is extremely regional. And I just, to flip that metaphor the other way, even in Chicago, where you have Cub fan, White Sox fans, I don't think any of them are watching the Oakland A's and San Francisco Giants battle it out. Maybe my dad's watching that stuff. I don't know. But that's only if the Bears aren't playing. And even then, I don't think he's watching the White Sox. I don't. I truly don't. So outside of your favorite team... Again, I apologize for the audio this week. Anyway, so outside of your favorite team, if you watch baseball, it's not like you're seeking the national Saturday afternoon game on Fox. Fox? What are you talking about, Joe? Exactly. This is my point. Baseball is so irrelevant on a national stage. It's regional. We'll just leave it at that. Now, the pace of play is very slow for baseball. That seems to have been plaguing it for all these years, especially with people my age and younger. And, baseball is caught in the middle. The baseball purists don't like change, especially rule changes. Hold on, just to adjust my monitor here. The young kids would rather watch paint dry than watch 9 innings of baseball that's not governed by a clock. Well, what do you do? I mean, if you're Major League Baseball right now, and you're basically caught right in between these two age groups. You have these baby boomers. We want it the way it's always been. And then you have these new group of kids, some younger than me. I'm 38. I kind of skew towards that traditionalist side, but I mean, I'm open to new things. But these kids that are 20, you try to tell them this is the way it's been, they'll burn your house down. And like I said, they would rather, they're all into soccer, hour and a half. I mean, you can literally sit on your phone, scroll through Facebook, and the game's over before you know it. So, going back to what I just posed, if you're baseball, if you're Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball, anyone in their PR department, marketing department especially, what do you do? And look what you're up against. You got this pandemic right now. You have baseball players being extremely irresponsible. Look at, is it the Nationals? Those two fucktards. The Cardinals, when they were in Milwaukee, 3 weeks ago, they're out partying at Potawatomi Casino. And look what happened there. I think they just lost to the Cubs last night, so they're at least 4-5. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a shit show. But hey, sports is back, bitch. So anyway, I'm all over the place here. So if you're Major League Baseball, you're Rob Manfred, what do you do? How do you combat this? Especially when you have the Houston Astros and Rob Manfred, who can't get out of his own way. We all remember that. But let's just kind of focus here, especially you, Joe. I'm talking to me. Oh, getting a text from the girlfriend. Important. Should I buy Apple stock? They are the highest they've ever been, though. Are they going to get higher? I guess we're taking in calls. We'll address this off the air. Actually, I bought Apple stock at $4.60, but I bought one share to kind of limit my exposure. It's up $5 today, so hey, I'm doing something right? The idea is it's going to split, and I'm hoping to take those 4 shares and ride them a little bit higher and cash out and probably buy more gold and metal or whatever, because this Robert, I can't believe I'm straying into this. Okay, so Joe Kennedy once said, right before the 29 crash, when my shoe shine boy was giving me stock tips, I knew to get out. So when I heard that, started kind of looking around, I went right into gold ETFs. I got silver, and I even hedged my silver bet with a ETF that's short silver, and I'm looking to get into one that does the same for gold. Because these tech, everything's inflated. The economy's inflated. The dollar's down. Gold is up. This is not a business podcast. It's slowly turning into one for some reason. But I'm telling you, these stocks are going to take a dip, especially if Sleepy Joe gets elected. But anyway, back to baseball, because I can't stay on fucking topic here. So we've been watching... What have we been watching the last few seasons? Not a legit baseball postseason, that's for damn sure. Based on what we learned between what the Red Sox were doing with Apple Watches, Houston and their cheating. Now, little history lesson. It's not like cheating is anything new to baseball, especially with the use of technology. But we're a far cry away from someone in the center field scoreboard using a half circle or full circle to let Bobby Thompson know there's a fastball or a curveball coming his way. I think we've come a little far from that, and that was still wrong back then. So what happens when these Neo-Maoists, Neo-Marxists, remember baseball's history is steeped in racism, like a teabag, when you teabag your friend's face. Again, this doesn't help Major League Baseball, nor does the cheating. I mean, it could be worse. Maybe these neo-Marxists don't care about baseball at all. To the point where they don't care if it's canceled or not. I mean, if that's where Major League Baseball stands with these neo-Marxists, these neo-Maoist crowds, it's as good as dead. But here you go. I mean, you saw them pander at the beginning of the season to them, so I guess they're trying. We'll see how that goes. And go Cubs. Then you got the NBA and the NHL. Try to adjust some levels here. I feel like I'm blowing this through the roof. No, it looks good. Okay, we're good. I need an audio guy. If anyone wants to work for free, remotely, which I have no technical capabilities of doing, so I guess never mind. So, with the NBA and the NHL, I don't even see how these two leagues can resume their seasons, even though they already have. I mean, there hasn't been a game in either league for what? 4 months? Almost 5? I mean, I think that was a space in between the first game between each one. But what? Huh? It's fucking August. But, no big deal. We're just going to, start this bitch up like nothing's changed. Let's ignore the fact that never in the history, well, okay, in modern contemporary history, at least in the last 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years, we'll say, post-Vietnam, post-World War II, because I don't think they were pulling anyone out of professional leagues for the Vietnam War, but they did do that for World War II. So since World War II, we have not seen a stoppage in play like this that has resumed afterwards. Have you ever ghosted a bitch and then showed up or texted her 3 months later when you're clearly on a quest for the hoo-ha? I mean, even if she lets you in, you know that visit isn't going to end well. I mean, maybe it does, if you catch my drift. But you're gambling, brother. And you know you're gambling hard. No pun intended. Okay, maybe a little bit. Now, the NBA was on the verge of starting up again. And then they ran into a few problems. They had a few soy boy softies like Kyrie Irving. I think at one point say they should start their own league, and then they just I think he just ended up opting out of the league of the season. It's just these guys. I mean, the NBA is just it boggles my mind because here you have. I mean, they don't have to pander to a bunch of kids, because they already want to play basketball. I mean, they have that market cornered as far as that younger generation. But these basketball players are some of the softest fucks I've ever seen in my life. I mean, for the last 5 years, these guys sat there and I can't breathe, hands up, don't shoot, Donald Trump this, Barack Obama that. And then the second China throws the iron fist down, they got nothing to say. You go fuck yourself. Where was I? So the NBA was on the verge. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So this whole starting the NBA back up, it's just so odd. Same with the NHL. I mean, going back to our theme of, just kind of like being with a girl and then being like, peace, bitch. A few months later, the NBA wants to start back up. It's basically the equivalent of going to that girl's front door, not even texting her, going to the door. You there, baby? I missed you so much. I'm scared, baby. I'm scared. I'm scared of being alone.
I get so scared of being a nobody.
All right, that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for listening to Ready Said Podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Spreaker. Give us a like and a follow. We're also available on Apple Podcasts. Please leave a rating and review. It really helps the podcast get out there. And just a reminder to everyone, you can still find the podcast on CastBox, Podcast Addict, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and that's all. Yeah, that's right. Okay, it's been a long one. This is your one-stop shop, current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Thanks for listening. Please share the podcast. And if you'd like to support us, give us a like on Facebook. And we'll see you very soon, you fucks.
Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter. And look for us on our YouTube channel. Ready, Set Podcast.